Shondell Young, and it is May 4th, 2009. And today I will be interviewing Professor Randall. So, let's get it started, you say? So, where were you born?
I was born in North Carolina, a little town called Bolton, which is in the southeastern corner of the state of North Carolina. It's about 20 miles up from the South Carolina border and about 20 miles in from the Atlantic Ocean in an area that is known as the Green Swamp of North Carolina.
Well, where's home now?
Home is here in Cedar Rapids.
How long have you lived in Cedar Rapids?
I've lived in Cedar Rapids for 40 years. I came here in 1969 to teach at Coe College. And I've been here for most of that time, although I did take a leave at one point. I lived for a few years in Marion and now I'm back in Cedar Rapids. Some years ago I took a leave for 3 years and went out to the state of Washington, at Washington State, where I was doing some work at Washington State University.
So what brought you here?
I came here to teach literature at Coe. My initial plan was to teach here for 1 year. So I came up here in 1969. I was going to be here for 1 year. And it turned out that I was here just for 1 year on that first occasion. Then I went out and spent a year at the University of Colorado working out there. And then the following year I was invited to come back here to teach at Coe. So I've been here since that time.
Moving. So, where did you go for school?
Well, my school experiences have been varied. Of course, my elementary school experience was in Bolton, North Carolina, which was at a sort of an ancient wooden school that had no running water and had outdoor toilets and had no central heating. But something began to happen. I'm sure you and people of your generation have studied about the Brown versus Board of Education school case, which of course was finished in 1954. And around that time, suddenly, North Carolina began refurbishing schools for African Americans. It was a segregated system because the idea, as I felt at the time and also felt later, was that what they wanted to try to show that we did have separate but equal facilities. So we suddenly got a new school with central heating, with running water, built out of bricks, most of the, even a cafeteria, most of the amenities that were needed at that time. So I finished that school, then I went to high school, sort of a consolidated high school, also a segregated school for the black students. And I went to high school there, and eventually I went to college at North Carolina A&T State University, which at that time was an all-black school too. All the teachers black, all the students black, all the administrators black. And I graduated from that college. This was the college where the modern sit-in movement started. They started there a year before I became a student there, but when I went there, activity was still taking place.
So what did you do for entertainment back then?
Well, when I was very small, we did, I guess you'd call them inexpensive games. We played a lot of stickball, we played softball, we played, when someone got a bicycle, we would ride the bicycle to death. And in the winter, we would add bows and arrows, in which we call ourselves hunting. And now it might be considered not the nicest thing to do, but our targets would be birds, which we would hunt and sometimes get, and sometimes dress and have them prepared for eating. We did all kinds of things too. One of the things that happened in that area was we began to work at a very young age. And so even small children had certain kinds of farm-related jobs to do, hoeing crops, harvesting crops, chores that were assigned to us in a number of ways. So a lot of the summer activity and often after-school activity was associated with work. When I was very small, even attending my first grades, cotton was still grown in that area. And after school, we would sometimes pick cotton and turn it in and weigh it and get paid a certain amount, few cents per pound. And so that took a good deal of the activity as well.
How has the civil rights movement helped you and affected you?
Well, the civil rights movement affected me a great deal. I say sometimes that people of my generation and a little bit after me, we were sort of born in the civil rights movement, born in a civil rights situation. We have to remember that this was strict segregation at that time. And North Carolina was also a strict segregationist state, which meant that African Americans did not have equal rights, which also meant that most of the politicians were against democracy for African Americans. So there was a lot of work to be done in order to get some things changed. Civil rights movement meant that I went to not equal schools, that our parents didn't have equal job opportunities, that the state conspired to keep us poor and conspired to keep us not as well educated. We couldn't attend the University of North Carolina, nor Duke University, nor Wake Forest University, nor North Carolina State, for which our tax money supported in a lot of ways. So we were really being done in a very bad way by the authorities at the time. And so the civil rights movement meant a lot to me when we began to get wind of how things were changing and needed to be changed. I mentioned the Brown versus Board of Education case. I remember when the public buses were integrated in North Carolina for the first time, for example. I remember when, of course, as people my age remember too, the presidential election of 1960 between President Kennedy and the other candidate for the Republicans, Richard Nixon. And then the introduction of civil rights support becomes more common in the political sphere of things. So it meant a great deal, meant a lot.